just over time, I started to feel like what I had been doing wasn't working anymore. And I was like, okay, me holding on to my, my sadness and my pain, like that's not doing anything for me. So like, I was kind of like, I'm bored of this. I am not happy. There has to be something that I can do differently. And I just started to realize like, oh, it is up to me. Like, it is up to me to kind of optimize my pain. And it's, I'm still healing. And I think that healing is a lifelong process. And I don't think it starts at a certain age. I think that there are people who in their 40s and 50s who don't know who they are and who have not once sat down and thought about the experiences they've had and how they may have shaped the person that they are today, because it's scary.
Welcome back to another episode of Your Visionary Podcast. I'm your host, Visionary CJ, and today we have a special episode for you. You know me personally. If you know me personally, you know I'm a writer, and so I love just being able to speak with writers and connect with writers, just hear about their journey and their processes. And today we have a writer on. But before I tell you, who she is, I want to remind you what Your Visionary Podcast is all about. This is the one and only podcast intentionally designed to push you forward towards a vision that you have created for your life. And if you do not have a vision for your life, this is a podcast to help you structure a vision to become the person God created you to be. And with every episode, my goal is to tell real, authentic, and purposeful stories, not cap, but true stories, to help you create a vision for your life and get closer to your purpose, a purpose where you're having a positive impact on those around you and on the world. And so if you enjoy what you hear today, be sure to share this podcast. It's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And at the end of this episode, I'll give away my 3 takeaways that I personally took away from this episode. So if you're watching live right now, you won't be able to hear the takeaways. But when this episode is released next week, be sure to go on Spotify or YouTube or Apple to be able to hear the takeaways. And so with further ado, I want to introduce our guest. Our guest today is Isabel Rocio. She's a writer and self-published poet. And she uses her platform on Instagram and YouTube to empower others to take healing into their own hands in order to step into their highest self. And she also has her first poetry collection releasing on the 22nd next week, which centers around the process of falling into an unhealthy relationship and finding the strength to come out of it and come back to a better relationship with the self. So with that being said, I want to introduce you to Isabel Rocio.
Hey, CJ, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for that intro.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on live today, all the way from the Bay Area in Cali.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, no doubt. And so I'm interested in having a conversation with you today and just hearing your story and kind of just hearing about your process as a writer. And so I want to start off by sharing a quote that I love. And the quote is that artists speak to the heart of the world. And I love that so much. And so what message do you feel like you're sending out into the world with your craft?
We're starting with the deep question.
Right off the bat.
Artists speak to the heart of the world. I like that a lot. I think more importantly, my message is definitely going to change as I change. And I think being a writer, just being an artist in general, like we can only speak the truth that we understand from our perspective. And right now, the message that I am sending as I learn about myself as just a person, as an artist, as a writer, is that healing and becoming our highest and greatest self, whatever, stepping into your purpose, your passion, whatever it is you want to call it, like 100% is in our hands. I believe that. Regardless of like what your circumstances are or what you're struggling through, like I wholeheartedly believe that everyone, like no one is special. I don't like to see people as the exception, even if they're living a life that I want. where they seem to be happier, they seem to have it better than I do. I think all of us have the capacity to evolve and change, and just change our mindset and like take control of our healing and our happiness. Not that it's easy, because it's not easy. And I don't want to make it seem easy. I just want to be real about what I've experienced, which is exactly that. Like, you can be whoever you want and you can have whatever life that you want. It's just, it's up to you. So I think right now that's the message that I am trying to put out into the world. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love the way you say that. And it's interesting, right? Because just being the age that you are and that I am, right? 22 and 24. Mm-hmm. It's like a lot of people, would say that we're super young, but just from the way you said that, I can tell that you've had like a lot of experiences that really just elevated your mindset to be able to understand that that healing is required and that you do have just the power of, I think of it as like alchemy, creating whoever you want to be.
I always use that word, alchemy. Yeah.
Really? That's dope. And so talk a little bit about just like how you got to this point at this age of your, at this stage of your life, to where you just know the power that you have within you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I am 22, so that certainty is like this.
Yeah.
Some days I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know who I am. I don't know what my purpose is in life. So I think no matter how old you are, like from just the conversations that I've had with people, I think you're never gonna 100% know. So, and I don't ever want to come across as like, yeah, I know who I am. And like, I know who I am right now, but I know that I also don't know shit about anything, like there's still a lot to learn. But I guess if, speaking about myself, like, I do feel like I have a good understanding at this, for my age, of like just the way the world works and the potential that we have. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting over the last year or two on why that is. And it's funny because 2-3 years ago, I was not this person. I was very cynical about everything. I was like, life is meaningless. Life is pointless. We're just here and then we die and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And that's the end of it. And now I have a completely different perspective. Like, I don't know what the meaning of life is. I don't know what's right or wrong, but I believe in something. I think my spiritual journey definitely helped me get to where I am now. I don't necessarily have like a religious background. I consider myself to be more spiritual. And I think my process of understanding what that means to me is what has allowed me to create what I have. And so I think, honestly, if I hadn't experienced what I had experienced from such a young age, which actually has to do with my romantic relationships, I don't think I would be where I am. And so my understanding is that like everything that we experience in life, there is a reason. There is a reason for the people that we meet, for the pain that we go through, for any trauma, family trauma, like there's always a reason. But if you don't believe that there's a reason, then, it is what it is. Like, that's the reality that you're creating for yourself. And I came to that conclusion because for a while, I think from maybe 13 years old to maybe 18 or 19, I was in very unhealthy relationships and I was in a very like low point in my life. And I went through those years with a very intense victim mentality. I had been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and I kind of, not that I wasn't experiencing those things because everything that I was feeling at the time was 100% valid. But I kind of used those experiences and those like diagnoses to say like, well, me not being happy with my life, like, it is what it is. Like, these are the cards that I've been dealt. There's nothing I can do about it. This is just who I am. This is just what my life is. And like, I kind of decided that was it. And, like, it wasn't going to get any better. And I had people try to tell me, like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you can get better. You can be happy. You can have better experiences if you want. And I kind of clung to what I was feeling. And it took me, a few years to realize, like, and it was kind of, there wasn't like a moment when I had like this epiphany or this revelation. I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I can't pinpoint like when that happened, when my mindset shifted. It was just kind of an overnight, or not an overnight process. It wasn't an overnight process. It was just meeting new people and moving out, being on my own. Just over time, I started to feel like what I had been doing wasn't working anymore. And I was like, okay, me holding on to my, my sadness and my pain, like, that's not doing anything for me. So like, I was kind of like, I'm bored of this. I am not happy. There has to be something that I can do differently. And I just started to realize, like, oh, it is up to me. Like, it is up to me to kind of optimize my pain. And it's, I'm still healing. And I think that healing is a lifelong process. And I don't think it starts at a certain age. I think that there are people who in their 40s and 50s who don't know who they are and who have not once sat down and thought about the experiences they've had and how they may have shaped the person that they are today, because it's scary. It's scary to like face certain parts of yourself that you might not be happy with. And I think the main thing for me was, because of the friends that I had, because of the people that I had to support me, and things that I was reading and listening to, like, I was able to kind of connect the dots and understand how I came to be in kind of a dark space. And I was like, okay, if I can understand that and understand that it's just experiences and it's mindset that has led me to here, why can't I kind of undo that and create something else? Different experiences. Like, why can't I do that? If other people can affect the way that I am now, why can't I change that? Why can't I be in control? So
Yeah, that's real. And I love what you said about how like healing is a lifelong process. And that's facts. And it's crazy because on this podcast, I had an anthropologist who studies, human behavior, and she's in her late 50s and she's still going through a healing process. It's like the more she learns about herself and the more she learns about like how humans were created, it's like the more she discovers about just what her experiences actually mean for her today. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like healing is a lifelong process, because it's like the more that we learn, the more understanding that we get, and so the more that we question the things that happen to us and the things that happen every day, so I think that's great that, you know that already. And I feel the same way about the healing. And that makes me just think about like, what role does writing play in this process, if any?
For me, writing initially, when I first started writing again, because I've always written when I was younger, and then I fell out of that when I was in a series of unhealthy relationships. I fell out of everything that I was passionate about, as can happen quite often. I wasn't writing, I wasn't creating at all, really. And when I was living on my own, I just felt called to start writing again. And I started writing the book that I'm going to be publishing. I didn't know it at the time, but I realized that I had a lot to unpack surrounding something that had happened at the time. It was maybe like 5-6 years ago. And I was like, I thought I had healed from that. I thought I was good. And so getting back into writing was actually, it was cathartic for me. It was kind of therapeutic. It was my way of unintentionally digging into my subconscious and pulling out like things that I needed to heal from. And so now I try to write every day, because now like this is something that I want to do. It's something that I want to get paid to do. So it is a bit more of like, sometimes it's forced. Sometimes I have to force myself to sit down and write. But for the most part, whenever I write, because I simply feel called to, not for any purpose other than sitting down and creating something, it is a way for me to better understand what it is I might be feeling, whether that's because I'm hung up on something that happened a week ago or 5 minutes ago or a year ago. I still have moments when I sit down to write, and whether it's just like free writing or it's a poem or whatever it is, sometimes I look down at the paper and I'm like, I wrote that. Like sometimes it's just like whatever needs to come up comes up. And so writing is most definitely a form of alchemy. And just, it's almost like my subconscious is like, hello, here, like this is what is going on with you right now. This is what you need to process. And here it is. You can see it. You can read it back and understand exactly what it is you're going through. So
yeah, I love that. And then when it comes into, getting into that writing mood, right? Because personally, I have to be in a certain mood to be able to really write. What kind of activities do you personally participate in to help you get into that writing mood?
I do try to journal in the mornings, like just soon as I wake up, I like to just free write. And that's like, I don't care what comes out. I'm not trying to create any kind of masterpiece. But I recently actually just got back into that practice because consistency is something that I'm working on. So it's a process. I have moments, periods of consistency, and then I fall off. I feel like all artists are like that. So it is what it is. So there's that. I try and wait. As soon as I wake up, I will just like write. But when I want to sit down and create something, meditation is something that has helped me in a lot of areas of my life. But definitely with writing, because I find that it's hard to sit down and create anything when your head is doing a million different things at once. So I'll try to meditate for maybe like even just 10, 15 minutes, sometimes more, depending on how I'm feeling. I'll sit in silence, or maybe I'll put on some music. I have a few playlists. Spotify is my go-to for playlists. And I'll just get into a headspace. Or sometimes I'll call people and I'll talk to them, and I'll pull inspiration from the conversations that we have, or I will go on YouTube and watch a video of someone that I enjoy. And I try to pull just from people and conversations, spending time in nature. I haven't been outside lately, but spending time in nature is also very inspiring for me. I wrote most of my book outside.
Nice.
I had my laptop and I just found a spot to sit in Griffith Park in LA.
Okay.
And it's just this big, wide open park, and usually it's quiet because it's so big. So if there are people, you don't really know what's going on with them over there. And I would just sit down, and I'd put in a little playlist on like classical music to get me in the mood. Or I would sit in silence, whatever I felt called to, and I would just write. I feel like nature is a really good space to pull inspiration from. Yeah,
I love that. And I heard someone say, like, when you're outside, when you're experiencing nature, that's the closest you are to God.
Yeah.
And so that's super dope. And I love what you said about consistency, and just the morning journaling. Like, I need to do that. And it's crazy because just this morning, like, I woke up, and like as soon as I woke up, like, I got on Twitter to check the news, like just to check what was going on. And I was just like, okay, I don't like this routine. Something has to change.
But it's almost instinctual to do that.
Right. Right. But it's crazy because I feel like instinct, that's something that is just created based on your actions, right? Because like your actions create your habits. Yeah. And so also it's like if you kind of train your mind to wake up and think of journaling, like that will become instinct, if you do it for long enough. So I feel like that's one goal that I have, just said what you did. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Honestly, the trick, I put my phone on airplane mode, not just do not disturb or silent or whatever. I put it on airplane mode because if I see the notifications on my phone, it's so hard not to just click and then get lost and start scrolling on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever. So that is the only way that I have been able to get into a better habit. It's just don't get on your phone.
That's dope.
I fall off all the time.
yeah, that's right. It's all good. So one thing I want to get into like the self-healer part of you now. I want you to kind of just give advice for just the young generation, on healing, on unhealthy relationships, and kind of just what you've learned from experiencing unhealthy relationships, because I think a lot of people have, especially a lot of young people, right? Because even with social media, like a lot of our relationships are built from social media or on our phones, whether it just be some type of app, we build a lot of relationships that way. Yeah. And I think with that comes just more unhealthy relationships and more pain, and trauma. And so I want you to kind of give some advice on overcoming that.
So for me, because I can only speak from my experience, I'm most definitely not a relationship expert or guru. I'm still learning how to really have a healthy relationship with other people. But for me, because I was in relationships, whether it was a serious relationship or I was just dating around or whatever, from 14 years old to like 20. I didn't want to be alone. Like looking back, that was it. Like I didn't want to be alone. And so I mean, even two years ago, I was just, even if I didn't really connect with the person, if they liked me or if they made me feel good because they gave me attention, I was like, I'm in love with you. Like, this is it. You're my soulmate. Like, I wasn't reflecting on who I was, who I wanted to be, the life that I wanted. And so when someone came into my life, even if they didn't align with me in any way, even if we didn't actually connect on a deeper level, I was like, no, we're getting married. This is it. And so I guess the best advice I can give is like, spend time by yourself. Spend time by yourself. Like when I was 14, I thought I was grown. When I was 17, I thought I was grown. I think I'm grown now. And it's like, I see so many people in their teens who are like, I'm single and I hate my life because of it. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I single? Why can't I find the love of my life? Like, where's my soulmate? Where's my person? And it's like, it's like that was me when I was 14, 15 years old. I was like, I need to be in a relationship. I need to be in love. And looking, from an outside perspective, I'm like, no, you don't. No, you really don't. Like, you don't need that. Like, relationships are, a beautiful way to get to know yourself. Yeah, you can learn a lot through being with a person. But when you're so young, you are not, I mean, I gained relationships, but it was like through the hard way. I learned through being in an unhealthy, borderline abusive relationship for 2 years, that like what I didn't want for myself. And the most important thing is just spending time by yourself and figuring out what you want and what kind of person you are. Because if you don't do that, because I didn't do that, you're going to end up with people who you're not even in love with. You're dependent on them for how they make you feel. You're dependent on them for how your relationship with them adds or validates your existence. And that's what I did for so long. Like, looking back, not that I didn't care about any of the people that I was with, but I don't think that I was in love with any of them, because I think love, like, we kind of misunderstand what love is. And we think that if we have feelings for someone, we have an attraction to them and we want to be with them, that's love, even if we're verbally abusive to them, even if there's no trust between us, even if there's no nurturing, even if we don't understand each other on a deeper level, we call it love because we're like tied to each other and we need each other. And I think spending time by yourself, like, you figure out what you need from people, and you learn how to give yourself those things, so that if you meet someone and they hurt you or they betray you or they cheat on you or whatever it is, like, you're going to be okay. Even if you go through a process of pain, if you know who you are and you know that you can take care of you. When you're going through something emotionally, when you're trying to figure your life out, you know that you can take care of you. You can answer those questions. You can provide yourself with solutions. You can provide yourself with healing and comfort. When you can do that for yourself, you don't rely so much on somebody else to make you feel these things. And so that's really what I had to do, was just be single. I mean, I was still dating and, casually, but I did spend a lot of time just processing why I viewed relationships the way that I did, why I kept dating the same kinds of people, because I think that you will keep dating the same person just with a different face and a different name until you process, what you're going through. And also, I think looking at the relationship that we have with our parents, or the people that we grew up with, most definitely sets a tone for the way that you view any kind of relationship, but especially romantic relationships. So just like sit with yourself, be by yourself, ask yourself the hard questions,
Yeah, damn, that's so good. And I wasn't planning on going this way, but just because you brought it up, just like the subject of love, like what do you feel like love is? And I'll tell you what I feel like it is.
My definition of love has changed maybe like 10 times in the last year. I think that's an exaggeration, but it's constantly changing. I do think there's a difference between loving someone and being in love. I think love is not limited. I think you can love multiple people deeply in different ways. I think love is regardless of whether it's romantic or platonic or it's a family love, whatever. Love is simply allowing somebody else to be, and the person that they show up as, when you let them be who they are, if you love that person, you're not going to try and change them. You want them to grow and evolve into their version of their best self, not the version of them that benefits you.
Yeah.
I think when you can allow someone, you can be there for someone, and you can be with them through their healing and through their pain and through their mistakes and missteps and failures. If you can be there with them and not impose who you are onto them, you can give them advice and support them, but you're not trying to change them into what you want for yourself. If you can, you see them fully for who they are. Like that is love. And I think you can only experience that when you're comfortable with yourself, when you have that kind of love for yourself.
Yeah.
So love, to me, all love should be unconditional. I don't think there's such a thing as conditional and unconditional love. If it's conditional, I don't think that's love.
Yeah. So that's good. So for me, I've had to really like engineer a definition of love based on my last relationship, my current relationship. I've been with her for the past 2 years, like on and off. But I've had to learn that love is an action and not just a feeling.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and like, I'm a Christian. I was raised a Christian. And in the Bible, it talks about love as an action. Like, love is patient, love is kind. It keeps no record of wrongs. Right. And so I had to just think about like that definition versus what I was living. And I was the type of person to where, like, if I wasn't feeling her at that time, then I felt like I didn't love her.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of just like put it in phases, but I had to realize like love is a choice.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can
for sure.
Yeah. And I can decide, you know, whether I'm going to love someone, and me loving someone is being patient and just letting them be them, letting them experience their own journey without trying to change it or make it what I want it to be.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of what you said, which I love, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And so as we get to the end of this, I want to talk about your book. What's the title of it? I should know.
The title of it?
Yeah.
It's called For a Rose That Blooms in Fire.
For a Rose That Blooms in Fire. Talk about that. What does that mean?
It's a mouthful. What does that mean? The title, what does it mean to me? The title didn't come easily to me, first of all. Let me just put that out there. It didn't come naturally to me. I went through a long process of figuring out what I wanted it to be. But I think I settled on that because I think it was my dad who, I was telling him about the book, and I was telling him I was trying to think of a good title. And we got into this conversation, and he brought up, I don't know what flower it is, but he was telling me that there's a certain type of plant or flower. It's not a rose, but a certain type of plant or flower that blooms specifically, and I think only after there's been a fire. Like immediately after a fire, like literally from the ashes, like it will bloom. And I thought I was like, first of all, that's dope that nature does that's possible. And to me, that was super symbolic, because I think that my process of coming out of an abusive relationship and coming out of just a really dark space, I think, you know, it's like I said, if I hadn't experienced those things, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I think I just wanted to shine a light on, you know, you can validate your pain, you can validate your experiences, your trauma, whatever it is, without having to let those things define you. And I think there's just something beautiful and powerful about people taking what they've been through, their fire, you know, their destruction, whatever in their life, and finding a way to use that to change, you know, into a better version of themselves, or a happier version of themselves. Because the thing that I want to emphasize is that when you're trying to heal, when you're trying to elevate your life in some way, too many people are, you know, saying, okay, let's do positive affirmations every single day. Convince yourself that you're happy. I don't think that's how it works. I think that you have to sit with your pain. You have to invite it in. You have to understand it. You have to almost dig deeper into it in order to come out of it. And there's something beautiful like about people's ability to do that, because I mean, so many people are capable of doing that, but you have to be almost brave enough to face your shadows and to face your demons, if you will. But when you do that, like once you've acknowledged all of that pain, life is always going to have something for you, but it's a lot easier to deal with those things because you've already faced, like, you know, the hardest part. So.
Yeah, that's dope. That's super dope. And it makes me think about how this book I'm reading, it talks about healing, and it talks about how healing requires 3 things, and it's commitment, tenacity, and perseverance.
Okay. What book is that?
It's called Sacred Marriage.
Okay. I'm gonna have to get it.
It's called Sacred Marriage. And that's good because I kind of just, you know, thought about those 3 things as you were speaking, you know, and talking about how you had to be brave how you have to invite yourself in and how you have to just keep doing that, because it's not just a one-time thing. Like you talked about before, how healing is a lifelong process, which is so good. And so I'm excited that like how can me and everyone else like get this project when it's released?
So it is coming out on the 22nd, and I will have it linked. I have a website. It's in my bio. I will have it linked. It should be available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles by the 22nd. So I will have all, both of those platforms linked in my website. It's just in a print version right now, but I hope to have it in like an ebook in maybe a few months. I think that would be dope. I know some people prefer ebooks. I am a book person, a physical book person, so I'm gonna just have it in a print version for yeah.
Dope. Okay, and then last question. Yeah. So back on the topic of just artists speaking to the heart of the world. What do you hope to accomplish with this book and with your writing long term?
So with this book, I just want people, particularly younger people, to feel empowered to stop needing relationships, stop putting so much pressure on romantic relationships, because I think that emphasis takes away from all the things that you can learn about yourself when you're that age. And I just, the book is, it's very personal, it's very raw, and it literally goes through the process of getting into an unhealthy relationship, what that looks like, what that feels like, realizing it's unhealthy, and then coming out of it. And I hope that anyone reading it will maybe realize, oh, this looks like my experience, like what the relationship I'm in now, or, oh, this is something that I've experienced in the past. And feel empowered to do something different. And so this, this project specifically, like, I just want to show people that they can get out of those kind of situations, even if it's family, not just romantic relationships or friendships can be unhealthy. And just for my writing in general, I think I want to continue to take my experiences and how I see the world and share that with people, because my writing is always going to be changing. I'm going to have who knows what kind of projects in the future. But whatever it is, I want it to be honest. And I just want to inspire people to figure out what their version of honest is and just go with that instead of trying to fit somebody else's mold. So that's
beautiful. And congratulations again, on this project and being able to just process things the way you do, at such a young of an age, and that's one reason why I just love writers, because I feel like as writers and as creators, like you have an ability to critically think and ability to process, experiences and just communicate, your heart through your work, and that's just such a powerful trait that can be used in so many different, areas of life. So kudos to you. And I have you're welcome. And I have your website. Is it isabelrocio.com?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I have that linked. And once again, thank you for joining on as a guest today. You're welcome. And with that being said, thank you everybody for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for when this episode releases. I release an episode every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And so this episode will be released next Thursday. Not sure what that date is, but will be released next Thursday. Thank you for tuning in. Peace and love.
Bye, CJ. Thank you.
And now this part of the episode is called the Visionary Minute, where I go over 3 takeaways from the previous episode. In this episode with Isabel, I learned so much and I really enjoyed our conversation as a whole. And so the first takeaway that I have is that your calling will change as you change. And this is one of the first things that she said on the show when I asked her about what she felt like her message was. She's very aware that she's young, being in her early 20s, and that as she evolves and just changes as a human, her calling and her purpose and her message will change. And I feel like that's true for every human being. As we change, our purpose changes as well. And number 2, she said, healing is a lifelong journey. And I'm a strong believer in that. Just the whole healing process. I feel like the quicker that you acknowledge what your healing process is or what you need to heal from and start taking action on that, the quicker you do that, the better off you'll be. And it is a lifelong journey because, life happens, right? And so there will constantly be negative things that happen in your life, but it's about being aware enough to be able to heal and push through that. And lastly, she said, you can create your own future. And we talked about alchemy a little bit in this, and I'm a strong believer in that, you can do whatever you put your mind to, you can do whatever you take action to complete. You can do that. And so just want to, end with that reminder that you can create your future. The power is in your hands. So go and make the most of it. And that's all for this episode. See you all in the next one. Peace and love.